Welcome to the Story and Critique Stream. This is a show where I read stories from members and writers in the community. I do a live reading and a live critique, similar to an alpha reading, to help you with your story. We do fantasy, romance, horror, thriller, children's, young adult, all the things out there. So that way we can focus on the story and what you need to improve. Welcome to the stream. I'm Kauffman, daily writing streamer, working on my fantasy book. And also I have this motto that if you're struggling with the book, just put a dragon on it. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to episode 45 of the Story Critique Stream. So if you're wanting feedback on your story, here's how you do it. The link to submit is down in the YouTube description down below. All you got to do is click on the link. You just fill out a couple questions just so I know what your name is, the book, and those things, so I can then add it to the queue. Your story gets added to the queue. I'll read it if I have time for it today. If it doesn't make it, your story submission gets resubmitted automatically for the next Story and Critique show. Right now we're doing 2 Story and Critique streams a month, so we do it bi-monthly. Bi-weekly. Bi-monthly, one of those two. So we do it every other weekend, so that way we can try to help you with your story. All right, and then how do I critique? So let's get into this. So as you can see from the critique show guidelines, I like to focus on character development, world building, dialogue, plot, or now tone or style. Essentially what I ask myself is, what bracket of writing does it feel like these specific problems are adhering to? So that way I can give the writer as much feedback that's intentional and helpful as possible. So I think by breaking it up into a category, it makes it a little easier for the author to then receive feedback and improve their story. All right, perfect. And by the way, if I'm reading your story and I'm highlighting it, no worry, that's just for me. So that way I don't lose track of where I'm reading or what I am on. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to be hopping into the first story. I'm starting with your story, Eli, question mark, which is a horror, which is, this is going to be a fun one. So let me cue it up on my end. I am so happy to be able to hop into this. Eli, let me throw yours up. So for those of you who don't know, we've done one, I believe 2 previous excerpts of Eli's story on previous critique streams before. And this is a horror short story, I believe, which is a little bit of a ghost story. We have a little bit of a ghost story. So I am very much looking forward to see what we have in storyline. All right. And I think I am ready. Yeah. All right. Perfect. Okay, here we go. And beautiful. And let me fix this, make sure y'all can see this. And I'm just going to move this up. All right. And just want to make sure that everything is all good on your end. Okay. Okay, perfect. So Eli, I am all ready. Perfect. And I think here we go. So without further ado, question mark, a horror by author Eli Minkiewitz. Previously, our narrator and his pal Matthias witnessed a horrifying scene involving an old man and a strange magical question. Now we see the bone-chilling aftermath. I look up and see that Matthias's ghostly face is bathed in the softly reddening violet light of a police cruiser. It's parked diagonally in front of the store, like they just turned in from the highway and didn't even try to align with a space. Typical. Just in time, I say bitterly. 2 cops issue from the squad car and walk up to the store. One of them, the driver, is a big, muscled up farm boy with a beef shoulder for a neck, his dark red hair cropped tight against his head. He looks in through the floor to ceiling windows of the front of the store and nods to his partner. His partner is a stocky black guy with eyes like a moonless midnight and arms bigger than my head. His head is bald and sweaty and reflects the light show from the top of the car. Both men are frowning as they walk up. Okay, what's going on here? Asked the driver of the squad car. With him standing over me, I see that his name is Rogers. We got a call about an old man on drugs. This him? Looks like, did we beat the paramedics? Jesus. He breathing? I'm overwhelmed by what has transpired. The way the old man's face twisted in pain. The way he looked so relieved when I said those words. Yes, I have sailed upon the boat of millions of years. Matthias is near catatonic. He's been out of sorts since he first showed me the app. Come on, buddy. Don't make me deal with these guys by myself. I say, is he breathing, son? Demands Rogers. Sorry, officer. No, he's not breathing. I say, dazed. Damn. All right, back away from him. You two, stand over behind the counter. I'm going to confer with my partner a minute. We do as we're told. I may not like cops, but I'm smart enough not to mess with them. Once we're around the counter, Matthias lets out a long but silent fart rip and breathes a heavy sigh of relief. It smells like something that was dead and rotting long before he ate it. Jesus Christ, I scold him in a whisper. He looks sheepishly at me and whispers back, sorry, man. Then he looks back at the old man again. I've been holding it in since Freakazoid walked in. He sets the phone on the counter and sits down on a stool and laces his fingers behind his head, staring blankly out the windows and off past the pumps into the night. Whatever. Quiet. I want to hear what the cops are saying. Damn. What did you eat, man? It's too late. The cops are done with their conference and walk over to the counter. The passenger from the squad car catches a whiff of Matthias's fart and scrunches his face up in disgust. His shirt reads Jones. What the hell? Smells like shit over here. Sorry, officer. That's my fault. You mean you shit your shorts, son? Rogers asks gruffly. Oh, no, sir. You see, I get gassy when I'm nervous or stressed. More like you're nervous when you're gassy, which is always, I chime in, not knowing quite how to handle the tension and the smelly air. That's enough, shouts Rogers. Now what in the hell happened here? Talk, gassy. This time the fart is clearly audible. It reverberates off the linoleum and rings through the stillness of the store. Both cops' faces are plastered with incredulous disgust at Matthias's complete lack of manners. You got it, John? Demands Jones. Yes, sir, Matthias says plaintively. I'd say you're overdue. Get out of my sight. Now, continues Rogers, turning to me. Dispatch mentioned that old guy was acting strange, talking funny, like maybe he was on drugs. Yes, sir, that's right. He came in and said the same thing the phone said. What's that, son? A phone? No one mentioned a phone. The hell's a phone got to do with this? Well, you see, sir, Matthias, my coworker. You mean fart knocker back there? Interrupts Jones, pointing back to the bathroom door. Yeah, sorry for him, officers. He's always like that. Look, son, I really could care less about your little friend's digestive quirks, Rogers blurts out, correcting the course of the conversation forcefully. You mentioned a phone. Right. Matthias showed me this really weird app on this phone. He told me that it was just there when he woke up. He said that when he opened it this morning, the screen went red, and then a weird voice asked, have you sailed upon the boat of millions of years? And then I guess it shut off. Rogers and Jones exchanged looks of irritated skepticism. Where the hell are the paramedics? Asks Rogers, then into his walkie-talkie. Dispatch, see if you can get an ETA on that ambulance. We've got a code one over here. He nods at me, signaling me to continue. So he showed me the thing, and instead of doing what he said happened before, it played this really strange video of some stars. Before Before I can finish the story, the video starts playing, but not just on Matthias's phone, on the counter this time. All at once, the phone, the TV that hangs up in the corner, my phone, and Rogers and Jones's phones, and even the Scratch Lotto automated kiosk screen are all awash with tranquil starlight. What's going on? Demands Rogers, nervously reaching for his sidearm. This is what happened before. I start to say, but I never get to finish because just then we all hear a huge crashing thud come from the bathroom. The last thing to happen before the shit hits the fan is one last tense look between Rogers and Jones as they both unholster their pistols and turn toward the bathroom door. Before they can make their move, the static and the grinding noise return and are joined by the siren, horn, and alarm of the squad car. Static fills the mini screens with furious black and white snow that the lights of the police car bathe in waves of strobing light. As soon as the sounds start, the following sequence of events unfolds so quickly. I can't even react to what I'm seeing. First, the sound batters our eardrums, and I feel like a spike is bursting out of my brain. It hits the cops a hell of a lot harder. They both drop their guns and fall to their knees, clutching their ears tightly. Second, they begin to squirm around on the floor. Their movements are sickeningly fast and erratic. Third, the cops, along with Matthias in the bathroom, start screaming in agony, all three in one exceedingly long, uninterrupted, monotone shriek, all at the same gut-churning, unnaturally low pitch. It's like some kind of music from hell, a song born of pure agony, and yet it also sounds somehow like speech. Fourth, I don't know how, but from the sound of the men screaming and the metallic grinding noises from the video and the siren and alarm, I can hear a voice. Those found unworthy have been purged. Do not relocate. Await envoy with instructions. The screens go white. The static and all the noise are gone. The siren, the alarm, the screaming. I look down at the floor and see the awful truth. The voice was right. They're bleeding out, jerking a limb now and then, and gurgling and gasping. I'm losing it. Tears are streaming down my face. I'm gasping, desperate to suck in air, but none will come. My head spins. The cops are dead. How did this happen? Then the thought of Matthias hits me like a meteor. I double over, fighting not to hurl. Matthias is disgusting, sure, but he's my friend. I can't stand the thought of him squirming around like that on the floor. When I open the bathroom door, I see that his fate, although different, was equally as horrific and much stranger. The first thing I notice is that he's dead, lying in the middle of the floor, face down in a huge pool of blood. His arms are stretched out in front of him, and his left palm is sliced open like a fish, deep through the flesh to the bone. I jerk my head away at the sight of it and decide to look around the room and immediately wish I hadn't. The walls are covered in writing in Matthias's blood, and a framed thrift store painting of a lighthouse that hung opposite the door has had its glass pane broken. Do you remember? The serpent took flight. The wind billowed under its plume. The foam spread across the sand, and the land was a mirror of the sky. Do you remember? I turn and see the mirror. The crown jewel, smeared in blood, is an outline of a person's face. The face has eyes, a nose, a mouth, and a pointed beard. I step in front of the mirror to get a better look and notice that the eyes on the face are much farther apart than Matthias's eyes and several inches lower than his at that. It takes a second, but then I realize they are perfectly aligned with my eyes, and I can see that I'm looking at a bloody portrait of myself with the beard, drawn in the last minutes of Matthias's life. Why would he draw this? What the hell does that stuff on the wall mean? The questions are getting harder to answer. Much to my relief, the paramedics finally arrive, and the sound of their siren pierces through the madness I've seen. I run out through the automatic door and greet them in the lot. They pile out of the ambulance with looks of graven solemnity. All right, and I am going to stop the reading there. That is the story beat. All right, and oh my goodness. Woo, man. Eli, what a great story. Oh my goodness. I am so pulled into the story now. We're finally getting the thriller moments as we're getting further into it. We get the first death scene. Who doesn't love the first death scene of any horror flick, of any horror story? Like, you're waiting for it. And I did not think that you were going to kill off Matthias so quickly. Oh, why did you have to kill him off? I was starting to like, what was his name? Fart Knocker. I was just starting to like Fart Knocker, and then you killed him off. Oh, man. After all that, Matthias did not make it. So, man. So Eli, so first off, developmentally, it was really, really strong. I would love to hear from you, by the way. If you're in the chat, welcome. We just did a reading. What did you think of it? Drop a comment, let us know. All feedback is good feedback as long as it's delivered in a way that's clear and kind. So what really stood out to you guys? When I was reading through the piece, Eli, I would say that your characters were definitely the strongest. I think the character development was hands down the strongest part of this. The world building worked out very, very well. I'm trying to think of I think it's interesting, Eli. I think as a draft, it's actually pretty solid. I think at this point, the things that need to be fixed on it is more cleaning up and cluttering. I think it's more tonally and stylistically, structure and grammar are going to be most of my suggestions and recommendations on just making things a little more precise. So that way they create as much scare as possible. So let's get into it. And I think this is a great start for the scene. I look up and see that Matthias's ghostly face is bathed in the softly reddening violet light of a police cruiser. So now that we've read this and now that we know what's going to happen, I'm like, yes, there's my foreshadow. Yes, thank you for the foreshadow. Absolutely love that. I knew I highlighted it because I liked it, but now that I've read it, great foreshadow. We always love those moments in stories. I can totally envision this as a short horror flick, by the way, as this could totally be a short, this could totally be a horror scene. So totally, that was so great. Hey, by the way, welcome, my friends. I saw a couple of you guys hop in there. Fan fiction guy, Amanda, so great. So glad to have all you guys in here. Welcome. So when I was, let's go into this. What else did we like about this? So, okay, what's going on? That's the driver. We got a call about an old man on drugs. This him looks like. So, Eli, a lot of my recommendations is just cleaning this up. I think it's just shortening it. We got a call about an old man on drugs. And I think if I was going to clean this up, because I think the paramedics, isn't all too important since we're here, so we know that paramedics aren't here. I think with moments like this, we want the visualization of the moment as much as possible. So I would recommend we got a call about an old man on drugs, and then I would just do things. Shoot, doesn't let me get my M dash. Won't let me get my. Oh, okay, there we go. Oh, okay. There we go. So yeah, so I would do something like this because we want to get to the visualizations of these moments as quick as possible. And let's say I'm overwhelmed by what has transpired. So this putting it in the different colored text confused me for just a moment. And here's why. What I'm not sure yet is when the text, and I'll just drop this here, let's see, I want to get this full part. So this is just something to think about, Eli. When you're doing the different color, like the blue coloring, I'm not sure. Does this mean that the evil character is talking? Or is this more like a chant? I wasn't sure if this is him. I think that's the only thing that I just wasn't clear about with this section. I think it's just this because I think you do it again later on, and I'm not sure, is this the old man talking through his head, or is this a voice that he's hearing in his head? I would pick a lane. If this is whenever he says, yes, I have sailed upon the boat of millions of years, maybe it's something he hears in his head. I would make it a little bit more distinct, and then have the character call it out, right? Did I hear that? Or something to that effect, right? If this is the old man talking, if this is okay, well, he's cursed now, this is essentially a curse, then I would not highlight the words here specifically. I would highlight them when they have more relevance. That would be my recommendation. Of course, do it in whatever direction feels right for you. But that would be my suggestion. Just because I want, when you highlight it, it's going to bring extreme attention to it. And you want to make it really clear why you're bringing extreme attention to it. You already brought attention to it in the previous section. in what we had read before this. And if yeah, so if you've already done it, then the more times that you do the coloring, the more you're going to lose its importance, or the more you're going to lose its impact. And I'm like, oh, that's the word. The more you're going to lose its impact, the more times you highlight it like that. And yeah, you said it's meant to just indicate that it is in some way special, not meant to be understood why. Now that I see how unclear that is, I think it's just not working and I'm going to lose the colors. Okay. I think you could do the colors when the man is talking. I think if you do want to keep it, I say you do it at like, I think you just have to make it clear, like if it's a curse. But I totally understand why writers want to do colors, because you get to explore and do cool stylistic stuff. And let's see. So all of this is good. Whatever. Quiet. I want to hear what the cops are saying. Damn, what did you eat, man? I just want to know who was talking here. But I realized it was our main character. It took me a second. Let's say it's too late. What the hell? Smells like shit. Okay, and then so we go on this whole farting spree with he came in and said the things. All right. So no one mentioned a phone. So the whole farting bit, which is actually the fart knocker thing's funny, and it actually works for Matthias's character. More like nervous. So we basically spend it's to the cops are doing. All right. So Eli, I just want to put your attention to something. So we're basically spend a whole almost okay, let's put this back to like normal text. Let's see what this would actually be at. I'm just curious. No, I lost it. All right, so I think if this was normal, let's see. So this would take up about a page. So essentially, Eli, the point I want to make is that you spend too much time. It just drags a little bit. I was kind of curious. And I think with that bit, especially because you're about to kill off Matthias's character anyways, I think the whole farting bit, I think it actually is important because it's funny, but I think you should spend like no more than maybe one paragraph or like 2 to 3 pieces of dialogue on it for sure. And I think that will because you don't want to pull the tension. What's happening is it's pulling the tension from the present moment where you want the reader to be on edge. It's funny and you can do that, but you have to just be faster about it. All right, and that's what I was saying for the fart bit. Let's see. So it indicated me the same thing. Before I can finish the story, the video starts playing. This one, this bit can be shortened as well. This is such a cool moment, by the way. I absolutely love these moments, right? This is the moment in the scary movie when something creepy happens and something appears on every single TV screen in the entire room, right? You love that moment. This is such a horror vibe. Let's see. Before I can finish the story, the video starts playing. And I think I would just shorten this into a single sentence because you want to be as impactful as possible, and the description, the paragraph pulls it out just a little bit. So I would go, before I can finish the story, the video starts playing on every single the store, and every single electronic, TVs, phones, scratch lotto in the store. And I think I would just do it like that, right? Because you're building up the tension and you want it to start being shorter, and these tension points to be shorter and brief, because you're trying to want to keep pulling the reader in. So that'd be my recommendation for that bit. Because we're about to lead into the bathroom scene, bathroom scene is great. Bathroom scene is great. Now, as a side note, if for this thing, like, you could of course add more to it if there's more action, but the reason it's because there's no action here other than just the things coming on the screen. That's why it's shortening. But if you, for instance, had the character be like, okay, he walks up to the scratch lotto and something happens, that would be different. So I just wanted to add that point of clarity. And then I have to say, Eli, this the moment where he goes into the bathroom is so creepy. Oh, I love it. Like, as a horror fan, like, I love it so much. Because this is such a great moment, right? The moment where you hear something, all the screens, something happens with the screens. The police officers are like, what's going on? They raise their guns. They go into the bathroom because they hear a noise. The police officers don't come out. He goes in. They're all dead. It's a bloody mess. And of course, there's a hint of why is his face drawn in blood on the mirror. Such a great moment. This was absolutely my favorite part, hands down, of this excerpt. So well done. All right. First, second, third. So it was interesting. I actually went back and forth on this. I went back and forth on the doing first, second, third, fourth. It does kind of make me like I went back and forth. Part of me liked it. I'm like, okay, that's kind of new. I haven't seen that done before. Then part of me was like, okay, well, but now I feel like it's a list. So I was a little mixed on it, Eli. This is totally a subjective thing though. And this is more style, right? Um yeah, it's just a style, something to think about. Let's see. And I don't know. I can hear a voice. Those found unworthy had been purged. Do not relocate. Await envoy with instructions. Now you see the coloring here does work if it's used only for when he's speaking. FYI. Only if it's used for when he's speaking. Like it was totally utilitarian choice. But I mean, like, that's the thing where I mix it on, like, it's kind of interesting for his character. I think if you do this type of thing, I think you have to be more consistent and do it every single time the character has a moment and make it more like a character thing. Like, okay, he's very like, he's pragmatic. He tries to think things like 1, 2, 3, 4. You could actually make it a character quirk, which I think would be interesting. Let's see. And then this, do you remember the serpent? Okay, and that same thing with the coloring bit. Already talked about that. And I think that is the end of the beat. That is the end. So Eli, really, really great work, my friend. What a great, great start to the story. And by the way, if you're just hopping into the stream, welcome, welcome. This is the story critique stream where we read stories from writers in the community and do live readings. So make sure that if you're enjoying the stream, follow or subscribe. We're here every day with the WriteNow community. If you're wanting writing motivation, if you're wanting to work with other writers, the WriteNow community is the place for you. We've done 538 consecutive writing streams. We have this story and critique stream as part of, it's about one out of about 15 different variety type streams that we do. And they're all focused with helping you finish your book. Because we all know, guys, like, writing a book takes time, but doing it with that community makes it so much easier. So make sure to tap that follow or subscribe button and you'll be alerted when we go live. All right. Whew, man, what a great first story to start off. I love that. Yo, what's up, Tiara? Tiara in the house. Okay, let me go catch back up. I think I missed some comments. I think I saw a couple of you submitted some stories, which was great. And yeah, I could tell definitely that the love and the interest for your story was definitely really strong. We definitely had a lot of great hints here. Let's see. Let me go in. Yeah. Blast. Let's see. Let me pull up a couple. I know Blast Rights was saying, I felt the urgency of the scene. The emotions were strong. Yeah. And I like, that was such a win for me. It was really such a win. Gore4 said, strong for development of paranormal or some other threatening. And that's funny. Fan fiction. You're like, you hopped and you're like, I arrived as you stopped reading in the scene transition. The great thing is all of our story and critique shows are available on the replay. So if you ever want to like rewatch this, we have it over on the YouTube channel. Yeah, we have it over on the YouTube channel. I can drop the link if you want to go check out more of the story and critique show stuff. But this is our it was not 24th, 45th episode. So we got so many stories that we've read. Glad to have all of our Twitch fam joining us as always. All right, fan fiction. Yeah, so great question. You want to know how to submit. Let me drop the submission link in the chat for y'all. So that way, if you want to submit, regardless of which platform you're on, let me drop it. So I'll go drop it over on Twitch. Let's see, story and critique submission link. There we go. I just dropped that over there for you. So that way you can go fill out that link if you want to submit your story. Aw, TR, it's always great to have you back in the community, my friend. Welcome back. Hopefully, we're going to be able to help give you a little bit more motivation as you return and get back into the writing vibe. Yeah, blast. This is definitely really helpful. I would say, so I've done 200 stories on the critique stream now. And let's see, if you want to see like what stories we've done before, there's actually one of our right now one of our members, our book club director Courtney. She actually made a full on document that lists every single story that we've done and links it to the videos. It's linked down in the YouTube description. It's under the Story and Critique Show uh article something. I'm like blanking on the word right now. It's listed as the story archive. So if you ever want to like see all the ones we have on there, we've definitely done a lot. But I would say out of the 200 or so stories I've done, I would say that probably I've had about 90%. I would say about 90% have had really great feedback. And then out of the 10% where I didn't get it, it was either I didn't hear back from them or they just felt that that the feedback I gave them wasn't helpful. So I'm actually really happy with that. I feel like a 90% out of 200 means that's what, like 170, 180 stories. I'm really happy with that number. Oh, man. All right, my friends. So we're going to hop into the next story. And let's see. I think, we're going to be mixing it up now for sure. All right. And let me just double check. All right. So we're going to be pulling up our next story. And the next one that we have queued up is Bound by Song by author Silas Inkwood. So for those of you who are in the Faded Fantasy competition, this was another one of the stories that was one of the submissions, and it's getting turned into a full story. And I think that is so beautiful, by the way. I feel like I've achieved my goal when we do things with the Right Now community, because we did this. The Fade Fantasy was this huge competition that we did about a month and a half back. And of course, anyone who wants to check it out, it's all linked on the YouTube channel. You can find it on there. But it was really cool. And this was one of the stories. It was one of the winners. And the single submission is now getting turned into a full novel. I believe it's getting turned into a novella, but it's super cool. I believe it's a novella. I believe it's a novella. You'll have to remind me, but I believe it's a novella. So all right, and let me pull up that one and we'll get right into it. By the way, WTC, welcome to the stream, my friend. Glad having you in here. And you're like, WTC, and how many of those stories ended up being published? You know what? That's actually a really great question. I haven't gone back and checked. That's actually a really great question. Out of the 200 or so stories that I've read, how many of them have gone on to be published? That I don't know. That I that's an interesting question, WTC. Somebody I will have to go into the story critique archive sometime and see like how many have gone on to publish the stories. My guess my gut instinct tells me that at least 50% of them have probably gone on to be published in some way, shape, or form, whether that's being published online or published as a book. But that would just be a gut guess. I'm not quite sure. All right. And okay, so yeah, so it's a full-on novel. So Bound by Song is a full-on novel. Yep. Okay, so let's get into it. Let me pull up this one, and I know I'm super excited. So we are switching it up. We're going from horror and thriller into the romance category. So for those of you fans here, we're going to be switching it up and mixing up the genre, and I am all ready. Okay, so we're going to be hopping straight into this. Gotta stop my Grammarly. We don't need that. And let's do it. All right, so we got Let's see. Bound by Song, a romance by author Silas Inkwood. And let's see, I'm gonna, nope, pull that. I want to pull this up just a little bit. Okay, perfect. So let's see, and I think that is good, and I am all ready. All right. There we go. Okay. Let's do it. And I'll pull back just a little bit, get a little bit more screen space. Okay. Bound by Song, romance by author Silas Inkwood. The school here was far different than lyrics, where polished wood floors would have been marble, flowed. Where torches stuck, glass lanterns hung, the walls were crystal, not glass. The doors were ornate, almost overly so. Tamo could hear the soft chatter of many children echo through the halls, the occasional sharp voice of a teacher, faint tapping of chalk, though he doubted they used something so simple on boards. His father's voice broke his attention. I'll stay long enough to speak to the teacher, but then I have work to do. He squeezed Tamo's hand. Do you want me to pick you up after school? Tamo nodded. Please. He normally wouldn't have minded one of the bonded taking him home, but it was his first day. He wanted to make sure he was protected when he left the school. Ah, here we are. They stopped outside a pale blue door. His father knocked, and a faint voice called from inside. Tamo resisted dragging his feet as his father led him inside. He kept his gaze on the floor, though he could feel his stares. This must be our new student, a melodic voice said. Tama looked up to see a high-born woman standing in front of the class. Like all high-born, her bronze skin made her white hair shine like snow, but the effect was almost blinding with her white robe and boots. A necklace of white opals hung around her neck, though it was relatively simple, and Tamo noticed ornate rings on most of her fingers. My name is Miss Rajas. Tamo, is it? He nodded mutely, dropping his gaze again. We have an open seat at the far end of the second row, she said, gesturing towards the seat. He nodded again and squeezed his father's hand once before making his way to the desk. Sitting down, he almost sighed at the ornate mahogany. Is there anything simple here? Class, as you can see, Tamo isn't quite like the rest of us, Miss Rajas said, but keep in mind, he is a derelict. Whispers broke out amongst the others. A few kids were openly staring at the dark patch across the left side of his face. Some shocked, some wary, a few almost disgusted. Tamo wished he could sink into the floor. His surname wasn't Derelict, but that was his father's. He clenched his hands against his legs. Excuse me, a soft voice said. Tamo looked up to meet the jade eyes of the boy next to him. Are you okay? He asked with a slight smile. His brows were thin and arched perfectly, his skin smooth despite the clear worry on his face. Tamo looked away. Yeah, I just don't like being new. His voice was barely above a whisper. He fingered the hem of his new jacket. The boy said, but turned away as the teacher spoke with Tamo's father. Finally, she turned to the class as he left. All right, Tamo, since you're new, I'd like to ask you something. Tamo tried not to freeze, tried to breathe. Your father said you are from Lyric. She smiled and leaned against the desk in front of the class. Most of the others have never left Yalian or never gone far. Could you tell us something about it? Tamo nodded. That was something he could do. Lyric is known for its musicians. We get a lot of Zara in autumn, and there's a really big festival when they show up. He stuttered at first, his voice growing stronger as he recalled the annual Festival of Song, a week-long celebration led by the Zara. The boy next to him narrowed his eyes at the mention of the Zara, though he said nothing. A few whispers broke out from the other students. Some pointed glances sent Tama's way that made his skin prickle. Miss Rogers' eyes widened at that. Zara can enter your city? Tama's happier thoughts about it stuttered to a halt as he noticed the others' reactions. His face fell, his shoulders hunching as he looked at the others. The students were watching him with looks varying from mistrust to shock to annoyance. Oh, I guess they don't approve of them. It shouldn't surprise him, but it did. At least it surprised him from the teacher. What? Well, can they? Well, they can visit the center, though their caravans have to go around the city. Not true. He remembered watching the caravan pass through the center last year. The bardos adorned in bright colors and vibrant fabrics, almost as interesting as their music. Considering the reactions of the others, however, he felt he shouldn't mention that. But they play for days, sharing news and stories from elsewhere. He continued nervously. Most of their instruments are made from the wood around Lyric, and some of them are crafted within the city. His mother had crafted a few herself, though he wasn't sure where they were once they were sold. Can you play? Someone asked. Tamo shook his head. No. We left for Yalia near the end of autumn, and I never had an instrument of my own. Actually, he did. He just didn't have big enough hands to play it yet. But I want to learn. Miss Rogers smiled. I'll let the music teacher know you have an interest in music then. Maybe he can help you feel more at home here by helping you learn to play something. Tama smiled faintly as she turned to the board and began talking about whatever she had written before. Based on the words, this was language class. Did the Zara really come through the city? The boy next to him asked for a while. Tamo nodded. Yes, Lyric doesn't have a wall around it like Yalian does, and it was easier for them. There wasn't such a strict separation of the races and classes there. Here, bonded lived outside the walls, unless they were servants. Then they lived with the family they served. The boy nodded thoughtfully, then held out his hand. Oh, my name's Rosen, by the way. Rosen Lowmore. Tama stared at him, his heart thudding in his chest. I thought nobles didn't go to school. Taking a better look at Rosen, Tama noticed the small details he may not have noticed until later. The gold edging his shirt sleeves, the diamond clip holding his hair from his face, the platinum bracelet around his left wrist. Only certain nobles wore things on the left side. Rosen sighed, dropping his hand. My father says I shouldn't go to school with the other highborn, that a future king should never mingle with his subjects in such a way, but he trailed off and gave Tima a sheepish smile. Well, I threw a fit. I wanted to meet other kids and go to school with them. The tutors are nice, but there's no one to play with my own age at the palace. A future king? Tamo dropped his gaze. Immediately. That's understandable. Was it? But why is he talking to me? Don't royalty normally avoid anyone lower station than them? And Tama was less than lower. He was taboo. Something that didn't belong here. Or anywhere. Especially not in the same class as the country's prince. Miss Rogers' voice cut through the room. Boys, you may speak during free time, not during class. She met their gazes, her finger tapping on her desk. Sorry, they chorused as she returned to her lesson. Tama let out a quiet sigh. His attention drifted in and out of the class. It was a mix of history and language, learning some of the older highborn words and certain ones from the Bade, the mountain-dwelling people, bonded and Assanin, the people from across the sea. When they were finally let out for free time, he breathed a sigh of relief, relaxing. End reading. Wow. So first off, wow, what a really, really great start to a romance story. Like I said, I'm usually not a romance reader, but I feel like you created a really, really interesting dynamic between the two characters, right? You're doing a lowborn, highborn type of situation. And I'm not too familiar with like romance trends right now, but I believe that is a popular enough trend where you're going lowborn and highborn. I think I got pulled into the story once I learned about. I think I got pulled into the story about 70% of the way through, personally. I think once I had that contrast between the two of them, I was like, oh wow. I was like, that was cool. That was cool. That I was really, really interested in. So I thought that was well done. I really like the character development aspect of it. I'm trying to think. I think that there could be I think there's a little extra clutter that could probably be reduced from some of the writing a little early on. Yeah, there was definitely a good amount of world building. I think I might. I think I wanted to know a little bit about Tamo. I wanted to know a little bit more about our main character a little earlier on. We were getting some really great world building, some bits about world building. I don't think we needed quite as much in such an early chapter. And let me clarify, is this chapter 1, the school? I believe this was chapter 1. Let me just double check. I need to pull up. Let me check here. So, number song, good feedback. You're wanting to know, was it a good intro to Rawson? Yeah, so Rawson's character was great, by the way. I actually really liked Ross. I didn't have any problem with Rawson's character. I actually think your character development was the strongest. And the setup for him was really, really well done. Let's see. And then novel first draft. Yeah, so this is a first draft. Yep. So I think what could be cleaned off whenever you go into your next draft. Let's see. You hear more in chapter 1. Interesting. Okay. Remind me again, where was this in the narrative? Was this like a chapter 2, chapter 3, or chapter 4? Or was this a prologue? Just remind me where this was at again. Because if this wasn't chapter 1, then that's actually a little strong. That's a little better. It just give me a quick refresher. Chapter 2. Okay, cool. So that was chapter 2. Okay. So chapter 1, we probably got a lot more character setup, which means that this was probably fine for getting a lot more world building in this chapter. As a reader, so then we'll just take it as from the middle of the book. Remember that chapter 1's right, want to do more character development. So you want your reader to be attached to the character. Once we're in chapter 2, or at least this point in the novel, it's quite all right for us to play in a little bit more to world building. But we always want to make sure that we're finding a good balance so that way we don't lose our reader. Let's see. So we're going into the school. All right, so we're going into the school, and I'm asking myself, what are parts that I really liked and that worked out well for me? We're starting off with obviously Tamo and the father, which works fine. Let's see. And we've already been introduced to Tamo in the first chapter, so we should already have an idea of who Tamo is. And so clearly we have, obviously he's doing a new school thing. He normally wouldn't have minded one of the bonded taking him home, but it was his first day. We get this does a lot of world building, which is interesting. I think the aspect of the world building that I love is the different class structures. You mentioned, even in like the first 2 pages, you mentioned something about the bonded. I know nothing about the bonded, but that's interesting. You mentioned a highborn woman, which makes me believe Tamo is then a lowborn character, right? Of some type of lowborn standing. And then let's see. I think all of your character setups are great. You set her up with a clear description. Great. I loved it, by the way. Like all highborn, her bronze skin made her white hair shine like snow. But the effect was almost blinding with her white robe and boots. Great work on introducing. Clearly, our teacher is going to have some type of relevance, whether that's just this chapter or more in the novel, in the narrative. Awesome. And then we go here. Is there anything simple here? I didn't know if this was really necessary here. Because with italics, you always want to keep in mind, right, that we want to use italics, right? They're obviously for emphasis, but like, what's the point of it? I asked myself, so like, is there a reason that this statement needs to be emphasized? And I don't think so, because we have to keep in mind, the more we use italics, the more we use em dashes, the more we use ellipses, because they're non-common, or they're not used as frequently, the more that they lose their relevance and power. So anytime with the italics, em dashes, ellipses, my thing I always ask is like, is this absolutely critical to be here? And if as the author, like, yes, then keep it. But if it's not absolutely critical, then I wouldn't italicize it. Let's see. And then let's see. So Klaus, as you can see, Tamil isn't quite like the rest of us. That would actually be a good topic. I should probably do a video on those non-common grammar. I know, as I get ideas here. Okay, I had to make a note of that for myself. Let's continue. What I really liked, and I think what you did a really, really great job on, is that you introduced Rawson. You introduced him early on without actually doing a formal introduction. And I think this was really nicely done, because it just introduces him as another student until Tamil has the recognition later on that that Rawson is an important character. It's interesting. Okay, so I think then what we get here is, then I think we start getting more of our world building. So she asked about Lyric. Most of the others have never left Yalian or never gone far. Could you tell us something about it? All right. So what I'm doing is, I was just curious to know how long this beat is when I'm looking at it. All right. So we have this whole beat here. Okay. So this beat is about, what's this? We got about one, two, so about 3 pages, give or take. Let me just drop this down. I'm curious if we bring it back down to 12 point. Yeah. So if we brought this down to 12 point, this is going to be about probably about 1.25 pages. So I think something to keep in mind. Let's see. So with this entire bit, when he's explaining about his city and what's going on, Tim, I wish he could sink into the floor. Where are we at? I think what I would do is, I think I would shorten some of the descriptions of his world, because at times it feels a little exposition-y. But like, once again, these are the things that we need the reader to know, right? We need the reader to know about the world building, but readers aren't always wanting the world building. So what I would say, but you did some really great contrasts. You actually did some really great mix-ups. Whispers broke out amongst the others. A few kids were openly staring at the dark patch. Where was it? I think when she first mentions, we have an open sea. So I think when she first mentions the Durlip bit, I think that's fine. This is a character. This basically shows him standing out. Tell me, I wish she could sink in the floor. That's fine. And then with the boy, the initial introduction is fine. Yeah, so okay, so we're basically going into learning about this music festival. Lyric is known for its musicians. We get a lot of Zara in autumn, and there's a really big festival when they show up. He started at first, his voice growing stronger as he recalled the annual Festival of Song, a week-long celebration led by the Zara. The boy next to him narrowed his eyes at the mention of Zara, though he said nothing. Few whispers broke up from the other students. Some pointed glances set Tamo's way that made his skin prickle. I think I would do things like I would shorten this. I would make this one paragraph, have him mention it, and then have the kids immediately respond to it in a single paragraph. Because I think what we want is we want to get to these moments of the way we want to get from a reader standpoint, we want the reader to be interested in the character development and then also be absorbing the world building. And I think the character development here is that he stands out and that other students are probably making fun of him. And that we get that here. A few whispers broke up from other students, some pointing glances sent Tamo's way that made his skin prickle. I want to get to this just slightly sooner. And I want more of this. So Miss Zara's eyes widened at that. Zara can enter your city. Tama's happy with thoughts about it, started to a halt. And then we've already clarified that the students were watching him. So I don't know if we need this quite so soon. I do like that he says something that's not true. The students were watching him with looks of varying mistrust. Oh, I guess they don't approve of them. It shouldn't surprise him, but it did. At least it surprised him from the teacher. Well, they can visit the center through their caravans, though their caravans have to go around the city. He remembered watching the caravan pass through the center last year, the Vardos adorned in bright colors and vibrant fabrics, almost as interesting as their music. Now, this bit, I ask myself, can this be condensed? Yeah. So, and I think what it is, I mean, this is, like you said, this is a rough draft. So I think things like this, I would ask, can this be shortened? Because we want to get back to the reactions here. And this is going to help keep us in the present. Exactly. So we get to see the festival later, anyways. So it's obviously going to be a huge thing, which means that really this is just a little bit of foreshadowing. Um, which means that we want the reader to be focused on the reactions of the students. Right now, the focus is on the telling of the story, but I think we want the focus to be on the other students' reactions and how it's making them feel. Right, especially since it sounds like this is foreshadowing. Then let's see what they play for days, sharing news and stories. Most of their instruments are made from wood around Lyric, and some of them are crafted within the city. Yeah, and then I think it's like things like this. Like we could just shorten this, right? This could be shortened into one piece of dialogue, instead of skipping. His mother crafted, because this is where we want to get back to. Can you play? Tamashika said, "No, we left for Yalia near the end of summer, but I want to learn." I almost feel like because we're having the students making fun of him, I almost feel like we should end with like one of the students snickering, because you did make it a point to do a rule of threes type thing, which I absolutely love, right? The students were watching him with looks of annoyance. The reactions of the others didn't feel right. And you had it somewhere else here. I think you should end on this bit of one of the students like laughing at him and really like minimizing the way he feels. And I think that would create more of an obstacle, because up until this point, the first half of the section, I asked myself, what are the obstacles that he is facing within this chapter? The obstacle is he is a lowborn going into a new school. Or he's going first day of school as a lowborn. That's the obstacle. But I think we want more of a specific chapter obstacle. We know that he doesn't really want to talk, but I think by emphasizing the kids picking on him, or the kids, or him feeling like the kids are going to pick on him, I think will elevate the obstacle of the moment and intrigue the reader. All right. And then now we left for Yalian. And then once we get through that bit, Now we get back into societal structuring. Go. Tama nodded. Yes, Derek doesn't have a wall. All right. Sorry about that, my friends. Some internet issues as I'm getting used to that new place. I'm back. No worries. As y'all know, I have moved into a new studio recently and still adjusting to some internet technical fun. So I think that is all of the feedback that I have for you. I feel like I was able to cover all of what I wanted to talk about. So I think the meet and greet between the two characters was probably my favorite. Was what I was ending on. The meet Rawson was an absolutely great character, and that's what I got for you. Thank you so much for submitting, my friend. Good luck with the continued work on the novel. Awesome. So thank you so much, my friends. How are you doing? I know we definitely had some comments from the chat from others that enjoy it as well. What a nice mix up from going from super scary into a little bit of romance. A little bit has what a different vibe. That's always fun. All right. So let me see what we got next. So we're going to be queuing up another story. What do I got next on deck? All right. And let's see what we got. Okay. So we're going to be hopping into the next one. I'm going to be hopping into, it looks like this was one that was submitted a while back from our very own Whiteseer. Whiteseer, I got the original submission for a phase bounty. I think this was the original chapter one that was submitted for your story. Once again, this was another story that was submitted that was originally submitted for the Faded Fantasy competition, and now it's been elevated and you're turning it into a full novel, which is so cool. But definitely really cool, my friends. So thank you so much for submitting that. All right. And let's see. So before we get into that, how's everyone doing? How was that last story for you? Are you guys enjoying it? I know I saw a couple of you guys submitted some more stories. I have them added them into the queue. And I always love seeing new stories submitted. Oh, we definitely have some really fun ones. So I was just seeing some of the other stories that were submitted. So cool. I always love seeing new submissions. All right. So very cool. Okay. So Whiteseer, I got yours queued up next, my friend. We're going to be hopping right into it. How are you guys doing? I am currently drinking my dragon energy drink. Hopefully all you guys are chilling with us, maybe with some caffeine, maybe with some coffee, soda, energy drink, something in between. Awesome. Thank you so, so much. Yep. And for those of you guys who want to get some writing in today, so it's going to be on the Discord in a little later, 6 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll be on 6 p.m. Eastern time doing with their Write chat for anybody who wants to get in some writing. It's a super casual co-working session for anybody who wants to get in some writing in a bit. So that'll be shortly after the story and critique show. Nice. I know, actually, Cheryl, that is what I also need to be doing. Drinking some water. We got to stay hydrated. All right, and awesome. So before we hop to the next one, I just want to bring to your attention that I have officially launched audiobook services. So for anybody who's wanting to turn their book into an audiobook, I have the setup, I have the technology, and I have the tools to be able to turn your next book into an audiobook. So I have just launched that along with the other writing services I offer, along with the book editing, the coaching, and all the other stuff. So I've officially launched the audiobook services. For anybody who's interested, I generally try to base my standard pricing off of industry rates, and then I give huge discounts for new writers, for new community members, for a bunch of different things, for channel members, for returning clients, for referrals, and all these different things. So if you're wanting to learn more, so why don't you set up a free consultation and we can kind of talk through based on your word count, based on your genre, and what you are looking for. So I'll drop the link here in the chat for anybody who's interested, needing help with some writing services. All right, just drop that down in the chat. Wanted to call that out. I haven't talked too much about the writing services stuff that I've done as of late, but I had officially launched the audiobook the audiobook narration services after actually by popular demand. I wasn't going to do it till later this year, but after the AuthorTube writing conference, I was getting asked by so many different writers and authors to do audiobooks for them because of how I did their live reading during one of our AuthorTube writing conference events. So audiobook services now available for anybody who's wanting to turn their book into an audiobook. And by the way, if you haven't turned your book into an audiobook you've already published, you're missing a huge opportunity. Audiobooks are one of the fastest growing, still continue to be one of the fastest growing markets for readers. I myself listen to books purely through audiobooks, and there's a reason that it continues to be a fast growing form. So definitely a great way if you're wanting to if you're wanting that other format into your for your readership and to help you make more money on your author journey. Yay! That's awesome, Blast. So glad. I know I had some of you guys in here at the AuthorTube Writing Conference. So on that note, let's hop into the next story. All right, want to make sure I threw that up there. And what do we got queued up next? So like I said, we got a phase bounty. All right, and that's right. I have to reload this up. All right, I was like, I have to reload my screen share since I had to restart the software. All right, and let's do this. 1 second. Screen sharing is a go. All right, perfecto. So I am getting here already. I have let's go this. All right. No, we don't want to highlight all of that. That is not what we want. Okay, perfect. So we are all ready. We are going to be hopping into the next, which is the first chapter of A Phase Bounty. And let me queue up what this is. So let's see. So Phase Bounty is a fantasy with a romantic subplot. This is the first draft of chapter 1, and we're just wanting to kind of see how it feels. So if there's something that stands out to you, drop a comment, join the conversation. A Phase Bounty, fantasy by author Whiteseer. Chapter 1, A Face Full of Straw. Maeve jerked awake to a pitchfork being poked into her ribs and the musty reek of wet straw in her nose. "You alive in there, miss?" croaked a voice, thick with pipe smoke and worry. Maeve groaned, her cheek damp with dew, pressed into the coarse straw, and head pounding like a drum. She rolled halfway over, lifting her head with the grace of a hungover cat. The old farmer looming over her held his pitchfork delicately, as if dealing with a scared animal. "Found you lying face down like this. Thought you may be dead," he said. Maeve sat up slowly, rubbing grit from her eyes and chewing the moisture back into her mouth. Her tunic lacing was unraveled, revealing more of her than modesty should allow. One of her boots was missing, and her favorite knife was not in its scabbard on her thigh. She groaned again as the memories of the night before came into focus. Staring off in the distance, last night slowly trickled back into her mind. Ah, what had she done? The farmer was still standing there, gaping. "You all right, miss?" Her dry lips formed a wry smile. "I've been worse." Her words came out like gravel soaked in honey, scratchy but unmistakably feminine. She pushed a strand of ruffled black hair behind an ear and proceeded to stroke the rough, clingy pieces of straw from her face. As she stood, the farmer took a step back, giving her some space, and leaned against the pitchfork. She shook out her limbs and the remainder of her pride and proceeded to tighten up her loose tunic. The distant caw of a crow echoed in the rafters above. Maeve blinked against the dusty beams of dawn light seeping through the barn slats, her head pulsing with a low throb. The ache in her skull beat in time with the sting in her pride. Cassian? God's damned bastard. The memory returned in jagged flashes. She'd caught up to him fair, a quick scuffle, a few bruises, and she had him trussed and tied. They'd taken shelter in this barn, shared a glance, some sweet words, and a bottle of Barastian brandy. Then God, she had let him go again. She'd cut him loose to share the brandy, and then his body. The last thing she could recall was the infamous Cassian Chance Harker galloping away, bare-chested into the night, on her own damned horse. Cassian flashed that arrogant grin, like he knew he'd win even as the ropes were tightened. She remembered the tilt of his head, the husky laugh, the way his fingers brushed hers when she handed him the drink. She hated how her stomach had flipped, hated it more when he murmured her name like a promise. She tracked men like him before, deserters with charm and cheap smiles, but none who danced through danger like it was foreplay. His story scattered behind him like breadcrumbs, half-eaten, soggy, and impossible to miss, if you had in mind to look. One night he was bleeding in a ditch. The next, charming a coin from a noble's purse with nothing but a wink. He slipped through towns, taverns, and bed linens with the same easy grace. Always 2 steps ahead, always with that grin, like he always knew the ending. He wasn't the worst she'd hunted, but he made the chase feel damn personal. Still, the bounty on his head had grown fat since the Baron's scandal. Something about the wife and a missing signet ring. The Barastian marshals had no love for him. Neither did the Halicians, come to think of it. He made a habit of straddling every line and getting kissed for it. Ugh. Maeve had taken the job because it was supposed to be simple. Track the charming bastard, claim the coin, move on. But the more she chased him, the more she saw the cracks in the rules he broke so effortlessly. Sometimes, God's help her. His smirking defiance even made sense. That was the worst part. She muttered, a string of curses under her breath, flicking from Elvish to common tongue as she searched for her gear. Her cloak was bundled in the corner of a straw-lined but vacant stall. The missing boot had been kicked across the barn in a lust-filled frenzy, and the knife was stuck an inch deep in one of the old beams holding up the rickety barn roof. Hung over the handle of the knife was her necklace, her mother's before her, a simple charm worn from travel and mundane, but it always brought her warmth to wear something to remember her by. Thankfully, her pack and scabbard were nestled in the corner shadows, untouched. The farmer, having sparked up a tobacco pipe, blew the smoke from his lungs. "You sure you're safe, miss?" he asked again, hesitant. "You look like you fought off a devil." "I did! And then I slept with him." She arched a brow at the man, daring him to ask further as she bundled the cloak into her pack and tied her boot. The farmer sheepishly avoided taking the bait and took another drag of his pipe. With practiced movements, Maeve cinched her weapon belt tight around her waist and pulled the knife free from its temporary home, replacing it into its scabbard on her thigh. Her sore body reminded her of every moment she had spent not sleeping and every stupid decision she'd made in the flickering lantern light of last night. Satisfied that she had everything together, she leaned to look past the farmer. Spying his cart, she asked, "Aldrich, wasn't it? Can you give me a ride to Thessaltown?" "That's right," he said with a grunt. "Wife's been waiting on a wheel of hard cheese from Thethel's market since the snow's melted. If I don't get it to her soon, she'll send me packing." Stroking his chin with the pipe still hanging from his weathered lips, he added, "Protect the cart from any would-be troubles, and it won't cost you." Maeve nodded in acceptance to the terms, hoping she would be fully awake if trouble did find them. "War's good for business," she muttered, eyeing up the road ahead. "Shame it's bad for everything else." There was an abundance of wrongdoers on the loose, most of whom weren't really of any danger. The common man had become more desperate. The occasional few skilled warriors, deserters, and the like had made banditry a real worry, so there was always protection work if she wanted it. "Let me get Burley harnessed and we can leave," Aldrich said, shuffling out of the barn. She stepped into the sunlight, stretching. Her half-elven ears peeked through the tangled black hair that brushed her shoulder blades. The breeze tugged at her flowing white tunic and travel-worn breeches as she adjusted the elven scimitar at her hip, slender, swift, and just as temperamental as she was. The farmhouse sat a short walk away, squat and crooked, its stone base weathered and patched with moss, the upper timber frame leaning slightly like it had long ago stopped trying to stand up straight. A thin line of smoke rose from the chimney, and chickens scratched listlessly at the base of a handmill nearby. The fields surrounding it were tired things, once planted rows, now patchy with weeds, desperate for spring planting. She could see the distant orchard drooped, with unpicked fruit turning slowly to rot. A once proud farm brought low by too many seasons, feeding soldiers and burying sons. She approached the house where Aldrich was hitching up, Burley to a two-wheeled cart. The large Shire horse appeared to have weathered like the farmer. On the back of the cart were three small boxes of spring greens. "Looks like a small harvest," Maeve inquired as she looked around at the size of the farm. War efforts taking most of what we got," Aldrich said. "We've been supplying Thessal for months, and that ain't the worst of it." He mumbled what could have been curses under her breath. "Can't even keep boys past 16. The farmer continued, his eyes turned to the road. "Brashtian recruiters came through last spring with a list in a wagon. My grandson hid in the well for 3 days." The farmer coughed out the end of his sentence, releasing the last of his smoke. "Course, my boys went off to fight 2 years ago, still alive, thankfully." He studied Maeve's attire more closely. "Guess you're a bounty hunter, miss." His statement was almost a question. "What was your man in for?" Maeve set her pack on the cart and rummaged through, pulling out an apple. "Theft," she said, taking a bite. "You gonna be adding a horse to the list, missy?" the farmer said, chuckling. "What's he meant to have pinched in the first place?" Maeve, chewing on her apple and gulping half a mouthful down, smiled and said, "A night with the Baron's wife." The farmer snorted his laughter in as he raised his eyebrows in disbelief. "Baron's gonna have his balls on a plate then," he confirmed. Burley was finally hitched up to the cart and ready to go, and Maeve jumped up on the front seat with the farmer as she discarded the core of her apple. The cart moved sluggishly, its creaking wheels groaning in protest. Maeve let herself ease into the slow rhythm, the sway working the tension from her limbs. The chaos of last night dimmed with each weary turn of the axle, her thoughts sliding toward rest, but not yet surrendering to it. The road dipped gently through a shallow hollow. At its base stood the charred skeleton of what had once been a Borast watchtower. The frame leaned to one side, half swallowed by the earth. Blackened beams jutted skyward like broken ribs. Vultures circled lazily overhead, and on the scorched ground, shattered shields and a snapped banner fluttered feebly in the breeze. A broken Halician arrow stuck out from the remaining timber like a finger-pointing blade, swift and merciless, like always. The farmer glanced toward it, lips pressed tight. Maeve said nothing, though her eyes lingered on the wreckage. She'd once handed over a deserter here. The sergeant gave her a silver, and it looked like she was filth. Now there was no one to guard the roads but fate and whatever steel one carried. The tower crested behind them, swallowed by trees once more. The breeze softened, the sun warmed her cheek, and finally Maeve let her eyes close. Sleep found her gently. All right, and we're going to end the reading there. Really, really great work. Wow. That was a really, really strong character setup. That was an extremely strong character setup, White. So I absolutely have to commend you. I felt very, very attached to Maeve by the end of that section. And that's difficult to do. And there was a number of reasons why it worked out. I think you did a really, really good job structurally from the character development, which I absolutely loved. I'm a little intrigued by the world building. I don't have a sense for what the world is quite yet. Yeah, I mean, I don't yeah, that's the thing. I don't understand the world yet. I don't know if that's necessarily important quite yet, but I think there could be a moment here or there we could add in a sentence to kind of give us a better idea of what type of fantasy world we are in. Are we in a world with like so obviously they're fairy, or obviously they're what half elf. So are is it a world full of elves, wizards, dwarves, ogres, orcs, trolls, dragons? Is it only elves and humans? Like I think we just need a little bit of a an understanding. Now this is the first chapter, so we don't need a lot of world building at all, but I think maybe like a sentence here or there could help cement the reader so that way they understand where they're at. I understand why she's chasing, I understand what the plot makes sense, her character makes sense, and I think we just need a little bit of up in the world building, just a tad, not too much. And then structurally, so when I look into it and I ask myself what no, that's not pretty. So when I look into it and I ask myself what worked well, character development was hands down the best part of it. Your plot was very, very strong. You had some really funny dialogue. Your bits of dialogue were really funny, by the way. I think your opportunities was a little bit of world building and then a little bit of some structure that I was just some couple things that I had recognized and noticed. So let me hop into it and see what we see. This is such a funny way to start off the story. I thought this was actually a really good call. Yeah, live in their miss, croaked a voice. So it's not about the dialogue here, but it's about the voice that, and you do a really great job with descriptions. Croaked a voice thick with pipe smoke and worry. And I think this creates a good initial visualization. So I thought this was a really, really nice start to this. I actually really liked that. And I think this is clear, right? Clearly she's lying face down. Something happened. I think this is a strong start. Rubbing her eyes. One of her boots was missing, and her favorite knife was not in its scabbard. All right. The farmer is still. Yeah. So I think most of that setup is good. There's like some opportunities for line editing, but we're not there yet. This is a rough draft. Um, And it's once again your descriptions. I love your descriptions. Her words came out like gravel soaked in honey. Scratchy, but unmistakably feminine. Now, I would argue, I was like, we don't necessarily have to need the feminine bit because we've already clarified that it's a her, but I think it actually works. I actually do like it. I think this does work out really, really well. All right. And then as she stood back, the farmer took a step back, giving her some space. She shook out her limbs. This is all good. The distant crow. All right. So I think my first issue structurally with this was her reliving what had happened with Cassie on the night before. Let's see. So this is all right. So basically, so this is technically all a flashback right here. So if I go back to this and let's just see if this was a 12-point font where so if this would be what like a page and a half of basically a flashback. The only so here's the thing. The only problem is it pulls the reader out of the present moment, which you did such a good job of setting up. We need to know this. It's actually is important that we do know this because this is part of her mission. But the way you're going about it makes it feel like you're breaking the wall a little bit to tell the reader what happened, right? Because basically what's happening, right? She's standing there with the farmer looking down on her and she's gathering her stuff. But then you spend a page and a half telling us what had happened in the past. So then now is she just standing there for a full 10 minutes being like, this is what happened? Right? So then it kinda, like, it breaks it a little bit, and I know you need to tell, and I know the reader needs to know it. So what I would actually recommend, adjusting this to, so instead of doing it as, like, a flashback of her, thinking back to it, well, actually, there's a couple ways you could go about it. So option 1, you could intersperse this with a little bit of dialogue of the farmer asking her what had happened. I think that might be a little stronger. Um, and having her using some of the dialogue with her saying it, but then holding back and keeping some of these bits as interiority, and then telling the farmer only like bare bones things so it doesn't feel like a flashback. That is one option. Option 2, you have to give her a reason to suddenly be in her thoughts and thinking back to this, right? Um, because right now she's standing there getting dressed in front of the, or getting her stuff in front of the farmer. The distant crow, maple against the dusty beam. Yeah, so you have to give her a reason. Like, so maybe if he's like, "Well, let me go get you some food or drink," or maybe she's like, "I need a drink," and she sits down and she like looking into her drink and she's starting to think about this. That could be another way to go about transitioning this a little better. You basically need to give her an action in the present moment that would make us feel like, okay, why is she now spending time reliving last night? If he got away, isn't shouldn't her first concern be like, I need to go chase him as fast as possible? And I think that's something that I need to know. She shows a lot of love, and I love that. I think that's absolutely great. I think that's absolutely great. I love that you're doing a hyping up her horse. I think that's actually a really, really great call. So, yeah, and once again, like, everything that you wrote is great. I actually love the story, and the story itself is good. I think you just need to rework the transition into the story and how you're presenting the story. Because this Cassian, I'm like, this guy's like a roguish bastard. Like, I want to know more about this roguish bastard. So I thought the story itself was good, but structurally and transition wise, figuring out a better way for it. Exactly. I'd say I think that's a good call. Yeah, I think so as well. I think that's a good idea. And then we go into, I love the character development. She muttered a string of curses under her breath, flicking from Elvish to common tongue as she searched for a gear. Cool. What a great subtle way to tell us she's an elf. All right. Love that. Great work. Um, and then we're getting the description. Her cloak was bundled in the corner. All right. Thankfully, her pack and scabbard was nestled. The farmer having sparked up a tobacco. Sure you're safe, miss? He asked again, hesitant. You look like you fought off a devil. This is hilarious. You look like you fought off a devil. I did, and then I slept with him. There's something that's really funny about that. I did, and I slept with him. But yeah, there's just something. I did. I think this would be strong if you said I did, and then I slept with the bastard. I think you should do that. Um, I do want to get to this moment a little sooner though. So I want to get to this moment a little sooner. And I think if you fix intermingling the flashback, I think because this is just such a great moment. I almost feel like that we should have this moment before. I almost think that we should have this moment before the flashback because I think this could then lead into the flashback somehow with the farmer asking questions, right? Because then the farmer's gonna be like, "You slept with the devil," and I know you kind of go back and forth a little bit later on, but this is just such a strong moment. We want give us those strong moments in the first chapter as soon as possible because you want your reader to emotionally connect with these characters. Mass, that's a really good question. You're like, would so Mass Toaster asked, would I let me throw that because that's actually a really great question. Would I start with the scene of the night before or maybe a piece of it? Just curious. I had thought about that. That is one direction you could take. There's actually no right or wrong answer to this. You could start with a clip of a scene of the night before. If you wanted to start in the middle of the action, like I think it would start with. I think if you were to go that route, um, yeah, I think if you were to go that route, I think I would start them in the middle of drinking and then leading into a really interesting conversation, and then her basically thinking they're gonna hook up, and then her basically being attacked. You could do that. And that actually could work very, very well if it's executed correctly. It's just it's a different strategy. It is a different strategy. And I think it would tonally change the way the first chapter feels. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to it. It just means that you're starting the first chapter on an action sequence instead of a downtime, low time sequence. Whiteseer, let's see. I want to leave Cassian's formal introduction until the end of Act 1. All right, so like Whiteseer really doesn't want the character to be introduced until later, and I'm sure there's intentionality behind that, which makes sense why it probably wouldn't be the right call then to start off with that scene. I think the way it's done now does work. It just needs fine tuning. It needs tuning. Yeah, Blast. That's actually a really good call out. That's actually a really, really good call out, right? That's as she's trying to remember. So, like, maybe she's telling the farmer the story because she doesn't remember, right? So she's like, what does she remember? Getting drinks at the inn. I know this is a farmer. This is just a recommendation. I almost want the farmer to have been at the inn the night before. Or maybe then pass by somebody who was at the end. So that way she can kind of ask questions. That could be another way to interweave it. But that adds a little bit more work, but just a side suggestion. And Eli, you're like, you don't, he's off gathering evidence for the fantasy war plot during Act 1. Good to know. So, yeah, so he's intentionally not going to be introduced till later for plot reasons. Eli, you said, also, I don't think starting in the middle of action is always actually a good way to begin a story. I think the way it started was good. And I mean, I think that's probably like more of a preference thing. I think I am of the personal belief a story can be started in whatever way you want. You hear these things from people all the time, and this isn't just you, Eli. I'm just saying people in general. You hear from people all the time of like, don't start your dream off with dialogue, or don't start your chapter off with dialogue. Don't start it off with a dream sequence. Don't start off with action, and so on and so forth. You are the author. You can start your chapter however you want. You can start them staring off at a wall if you really want to. It's not about the way that you start the story. It's about how is it executed so that you make your reader care about the character in whatever's being happen. The problem is a lot of the times, like dream sequences have started off stories so many times. So then it becomes overused. So then it leads to eventually readers feeling like, oh, okay, this is always overdone. It's not exciting. Right. And if somebody doesn't emotionally invest or connect to it, then they can't get excited about it. So I think that's always the thing to keep in mind. Wait, so you need to introduce Lofan. Oh, I love that. What else? I'm seeing if there was other bits. Yeah, I mean that was basically the gist of it. Whiteseer. I think the other bits is just like shortening down on some of this wordiness. When the farmer is kind of explaining his story, I was like, I don't know if I really need the whole bit. Unless it's relevant to the plot. Unless this is going to be relevant to the plot later, or he's going to be more of a character. I would just shorten this. I'd make this like 1 or 2 pieces of dialogue. Because really the important bit is him asking about her being a bounty hunter. Let's see. The farmer snorted laughter as he raised eyebrows. Brand's gonna have the balls on a plate then. Yeah, and then the rest of that was good. So, good. We didn't get to her using her powers. I know, Whiteseer. You'll have to resubmit again, my friend. Of course, I love magic, and I think that's always the challenge, right? You're like, we want to submit the stories, but how much time can Kauffman actually get through all of them? So you'll have to resubmit another excerpt, my friend, but definitely a really, really great start to it. Definitely really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for that. And everyone, thank you so much for the comments. You guys had some absolutely great comments so far. Absolutely great suggestions. Keep the fun coming. And by the way, if you're just hopping into the stream, welcome. We're reading live stories and doing live critiques for writers in the community. If you want feedback on your book, submit now. Linked down in the YouTube description down below. And if you're enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. This is the 45th episode of the Story and Critique stream, and I do all types of things to help you finish your book. So if you're needing videos or streams for motivation, if you're needing feedback on your work, we have free options like the Story and Critique stream. I have paid options that I offer with writing services. Well, I do it all because I know writing a book takes time. I'm currently on the second draft of my fantasy book, The Last Scarecrow, which is currently at 160,000 words. And I'm currently revising the second draft of it. So if you're wanting that active writing community, make sure you tap that follow or subscribe button and you'll be alerted when we go live. All right, my friends. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So let's see, what do we got next? All right. And thank you. I know we've had some fun ones. All right. Okay. So I think here, let's see what we are. Oh, am I breaking up? I know, new internet problems, new internet. Bear with me, my friends. Y'all know whenever I move into a new studio, I feel like it always takes like a couple weeks to get the internet under control. So if you guys miss anything, or if I'm cutting in and out, just holler at me. Awesome, but so glad to have. Thank you so much. I completely agree. I thought it was a great first draft, by the way. And once again, I'm so proud that that story started with the Fate Fancy contest. Blast right check. May the internet gods be forever in my favor. Awesome. So on that note, let's get into the next story. So I'm going to do one of our new writers here in the community. I'm going to hop into a story excerpt submitted by Verity, Lennon. So I'm going to hop into a story excerpt submitted here by Verity, Lennon. This is Courting Death. It's a mythic Why Choose Romantasy by author Verity, Lennon. So as always, we get so many submissions for the community. I really try to make sure that I balance a lot of our experienced writers who've submitted multiple times, and then some of our new ones as well. Verity, I wanted to recognize one of our new writers for the community because we want to be able to bring more writers into the community. The more writers, the more feedback, the more expertise, and the more genres that we can represent. So I'm going to do that here, and let's see what we got. All right. So I have your story all pulled up here, Verity, and let's see. Give me just a moment. Let me pull it up. All right. And I think I got this all set, possibly. Let's see. All right, perfect. And I am all set on my end. So we're going to hop into this next excerpt. Blast, welcome to the community. Thank you so much for submitting. And let's see what we are going to be getting into today. All right. Let's see. As I make sure that this one, I was like, hopefully I got the right one. I guess we're about to find out. Yeah, I think I pulled up the right one. So we'll see. I think everyone can see it. Let me make sure that it is clear enough. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So I believe all you guys can see it. I think that should be good. Okay, so I am all set, and let's see what we got. And once again, I don't read any stories until the stream, so that way I can try to keep it interesting. All right, so let me pull up what we got for this one. So this is Courting Death. This is a mythic Why Choose Romantasy. And let's see what we got. So this is the prologue in chapter 1 is good enough. Verity wants to see if the prologue in chapter 1 is good enough to continue to entice the reader to keep reading. This is a novel, and it looks like this is a later draft of a novel. All right, and let's see what we got. Courting Death, Mythic, Why Choose Romantasy by Verity, Lennon. Prologue, Thanatos. Protect the girl. Athena's command echoed in Thanatos' mind as he flew through the night, a nagging reminder that he couldn't refuse. He resented having more responsibilities added to his already busy schedule, feeling pulled in every direction. The wind whipped around him as he cut through the sky, his wings slicing the cold air with the precision of a blade. The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the land as wisps of cloud drifted below him. Soft and insubstantial, they veiled the mortal world in a hazy mirage, distant and irrelevant to him, as it was for most gods. Once, long ago, he would have accepted such a duty without question, without resentment. He would have carried it out with a quiet understanding that mortal life was fragile and needed to be protected. But time had eroded that softness in him, just like the river he was flying above, carved through the ancient stones. His existence was divided into duties, each aspect of himself working in tandem. One part of his consciousness drifted through the halls of the underworld, compiling lists of the dead to be presented to Hades. At the same time, another stood vigil over dying souls, ensuring their safe passage into the underworld, while yet another scoured the reports from the fates, planning his next moves. That should have been his focus, not a human girl. Humans died every day, as they were supposed to. It was the natural order of things. So why had Athena sought him out for this one? Wasn't protecting cursed mortals more suited to the heroes? Thanatos sighed. He had tried to push for more information, but the goddess had remained tight-lipped. Arguing with Athena was like striking stone with one's bare hands. Even if he had fought harder, he doubted he would have pried any more answers from her. And if he had pushed too hard, he might have found himself on her grudge list, a place no sane god wanted to be. Still, the lack of explanation unsettled him. This girl and her family were suspected victims of a curse. It wasn't an uncommon occurrence. Curses, divine wrath, mortal folly, humans found a way to stumble into trouble all the time. That wasn't his problem. Yet, Athena had given him a direct order: keep her alive at all costs. Thanatos exhaled sharply, feeling the weight of the command settle over him like a chain. His promises to others always seemed to hold more power than the oaths he made to himself. And because of that, he was now on his way to do the one thing he swore he would never do again: protect the living. His wings carried him faster as the speck of life on the world below grew larger as he neared. The city he approached was swallowed by the vast expanse of desert and mountains stretching to the horizon. Mortals, so small and insignificant, carried on with their lives, unaware of the gods shaping their fates. Thanatos had kept his distance from them for centuries, only interacting when duty demanded it. He had long since learned that entangling himself in human affairs led only to suffering. Yet, despite himself, a thread of curiosity wove its way into his thoughts. What made this girl different? At first, his irritation had drowned out the question, but now that emotion had dulled, replaced by something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Curiosity was dangerous. It led to attachments, to mistakes, to heartbreak. But it also meant he couldn't ignore the questions forming in his mind. Why her? Why now? And why, out of all the gods, had Athena chosen him? His wings beat harder, the wind howling around him, mirroring the unease creeping into his thoughts. The mission had begun as an inconvenience, a distraction from his real work. But now Thanatos had to know why. And he wasn't convinced he would like the answer. Chapter 1. Ileana. The dregs of her 5th energy drink burned her throat, the carbonation stinging as she forced it down. The droning voice on the radio did nothing to keep her awake. If anything, the tragic news of nearby flash floods only weighed her down further. She slapped the radio off and gripped the wheel tighter, focusing on the road ahead. The hum of the tires on asphalt created a hypnotic rhythm that lulled rather than sharpened her mind. Her vision blurred at the edges, and she blinked hard, rolling the window down all the way, hoping the slap of cold March air would jolt her awake. It didn't. "Do not fall asleep at the wheel," she muttered, shaking her head and forcing her drooping eyelids open. The past month had been hell. Every time she started to feel like her life was on the right track, something knocked her flat again. It had always been like this. Hope was dangerous, a false sense of security before the inevitable fall. This time, though, the crash had been devastating. She forced herself to keep her mind on the road, but memories clawed their way in anyway. The phone call had come earlier that month, a stranger with a disconnected, unfeeling voice telling her something impossible. There had been an accident, and her parents were gone. At first, she had laughed, assuming the call was a mistake. She had spoken to her mother that same morning. It couldn't be real. It wasn't. At least not until a police officer showed up at Ileana's job did reality slam into her. Her parents had been killed in a car wreck. The caller hadn't been mistaken. She had. How could the world be so cruel as to take the lives of 2 beautiful souls who built a life full of adventure and wonder? They never needed stability or feared the unknown, not like Ileana. She felt lost even before their passing, never seeming to find the sense of freedom they'd instilled in her, the freedom they had so effortlessly embraced. Their weekly phone calls could brighten her worst days, their surprise visits sweeping her into spontaneous trips that made her forget her worries, if only for a little while. But fate was unkind. Without them, the world felt smaller, dimmer, a place she no longer knew how to navigate. Everything after that had been a blur of paperwork, funeral arrangements, and kind but hollow condolences. Numbness had been her only shield. The funeral had been short, but the trip to follow their final wishes had felt like an eternity. She'd poured out her parents' ashes, watching with tears streaming down her face, as she surrendered them to the dry desert wind, far out of her reach. The last traces of her only family had vanished into the breeze, signaling the end of a chapter. She hadn't been ready to close. She had stopped responding to Aaron's texts, the man who had seemed like he might keep her attention longer than most. He had been a regular customer at the bank who had flirted with her. After several visits, she'd finally agreed to go out on a date with him. He'd been sweet, fun, and incredibly handsome, but through her grief, even his kindness had felt like a weight rather than comfort. He checked on her at first, but she never answered. Eventually, he stopped. They always did. Ileana was sure they always would. Guilt ate at her when she thought about her past relationships and how she'd ended them. But they never felt right or enough, never being one to fight for what or who she wanted. She'd walk away before her interest could fully wane, or theirs. It was better than sticking around in a relationship and pretending. She hated lying and wouldn't hold someone in a one-sided relationship when she couldn't return their feelings fully. She wanted what her parents had, the effortless connection, the unspoken understanding, the quiet instinct to know when to comfort and when to give space, a love so natural it felt like breathing. But none of her relationships ever came close. There was no ease, no deep understanding, just fleeting attraction and surface level affection that never lasted. Was she foolish for attempting to chase something that didn't exist? Why couldn't she just be happy with them? Why was she clinging to the idea that someone somewhere would be worth fighting for? Who might even fight for her? Maybe she was meant to be alone. The thought tightening around her chest like a vice, loneliness pressing and heavy and suffocating. She gripped the wheel harder. She was alone. Her thoughts tangled, exhaustion creeping in, blurring the edges of reality. She couldn't remember the last time she had slept for more than an hour at a time. The nightmares came too fast, too vividly. War, battles, monsters, faces she didn't recognize, and horror she could never quite recall upon waking. Worse than the nightmares, though, was the waking terror. almost drowning in the bathtub, suffocating from a gas leak, and finally waking up barefoot in the middle of the street at 3 a.m. She'd woken up to the sound of car horns, standing feet away from a stopped car in nothing but her nightgown, and her feet freezing against the asphalt. The doctors dismissed her concerns, saying she was only stressed and grieving, but they weren't the ones waking to find their own body betraying them. How was she supposed to trust herself or her decisions when she couldn't control where she ended up in the middle of the night? Between the grief, the exhaustion, and the fear of herself, it was all too damned much. She needed sleep. But sleep wasn't the comfort it should have been. It was now a risk she took each time she closed her eyes. Swallowing thickly, she tried to push down the grief that was threatening to send her spiraling once again. Instead of thinking about their deaths, she thought of how they lived, how they wandered from city to city, chasing adventure, never feeling tied down, and never afraid of the unknown. Maybe Eliana should give up the foolish idea she'd had as a teenager, desperately wanting normalcy and stability. Should she leave Tucson and start fresh somewhere new? She knew her parents would have wanted that for her and would have encouraged her to follow wherever the winds would take her, to chase after what she wanted and hold on desperately when she found it. But what was it she wanted? Learning had always been one of her passions, but no subject held her interest long enough to commit. She'd put off college, waiting to find the one thing that would stick, but that time never came. She'd always loved the idea of traveling. Maybe there was a school program that could take her abroad, giving her a way to see the world finally. Eliana pushed the air from her lungs slowly, the decision settling in her chest like a tiny spark of hope. First thing in the morning, she'd start looking for her next adventure. All right, and end reading there. End reading there. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Wow. Oh my goodness. That was a really, really strong start. Wow. What a great, great start to that story. First off, I just have to say, really, really great work. For Verity, Blast Arts, really, really great work. That was such a fun opening to a story. I would there were so many things that were working well for that story, and I know that you had shared, I believe you said this is a final draft. It definitely feels like a final draft. I would say it definitely, definitely, definitely feels like a final draft. So really, really great work on what you've accomplished with this story. I felt like the character was engaging, the world building was intriguing. We all love our Greek mythology. And I think the prologue was tackled very well. I think this is an example of how you do a prologue well. Now, I'm going to have to I would have to read the whole story to really understand why why we needed the POV from Thanatos. But if I'm just taking a guess right now, we want it that it's a much bigger. It tells me that the promise of this story of the world is that it's actually about a bigger Greek mythological type thing, but our protagonist is the hero, is our main character Ileana. So I think this was actually a very well done use of a prologue, where you had to set up that this is actually really a Greek mythology type story. But we're not actually following a Greek mythological character, we're following a human. So I think that was actually really well done. This almost it almost kind of feels like yeah, that was well done. So I really liked that. I thought that was a great, great, great call. Um, yeah, wow. And I could tell definitely you got definitely some love from the comments as well. And it was definitely really, really interesting. Yeah, and I mean, if I think of romantasy, did this feel like romantasy? Yeah, and I mean, I could totally see that, right? So it's basically Thanatos and the girl. I could see why it's probably going to be a romantasy vibe. Yeah, I could definitely see that. So let's hop into it. There was some things that you just did very, very well. I'm asking myself what fixes, things I could recommend. And I think a lot of my recommendations are going to be just cutting down on a little bit of wordiness and some minor fine tuning. This was a really great start, really good start to the story. Protect the girl. Straightforward, 3 words. italics to emphasize. Nice work. And then we're being introduced to Thanatos. What I loved was the wind whipped around him as he cut the sky, his wings slicing the cold air with the precision of a blade. The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the land as wisps of cloud drifted below him. Your description of him is really, really well done. So I'm really, really intrigued by it. You did such a good job of setting up his character arc, right? That he's basically being forced to through Athena. And then anybody who's aware or has some knowledge of Greek mythology will already be familiar with the references between Thanatos, between Athena, and what their pre-existing relationship and dynamic is. Let's see. And you have moments like this. Arguing with Athena was like striking stone with one's bare hand. That was a really good. You have a lot of great moments like this. I can tell you've really worked on it and tweaked it and gone through taking it through some editing. So really nice work. I think from a structure standpoint, and this would be for copy editing. So I don't know if you took it through a copy edit, but I think there's times where it feels like you have a little bit of an overuse on M dashes. I might recommend going through it and asking yourself, are these M dashes essential? I love myself a good M dash. But like our other like non-traditional types of grammar, we want to use it sparingly, because the more we use it, the more each time we use it, the more it just loses its power. And you do tend to use a little bit too many M dashes, in my opinion. That could be a little subjective. So what I would recommend is when you go through it, when you're taking through it final proofread, unless you're planning on taking it through another edit, but you had said it was a final draft, so it's probably just ready for a proofread is my guess. I would look at each use of M dash and ask myself, is it important? Is it important? So, because like this first one, Athena's command echoed in Thanatos' mind as he flew through the night, a nagging reminder that he couldn't refuse. I think it does work. It absolutely does work. Once long ago, he would have accepted such a duty without question, without resentment. I was like, I don't know if this one's really necessary. So you just kind of want to ask yourself this. And if you're not sure if it uses an M dash, here's a cool trick. And I'll tell anyone this. So this is actually a really cool trick. If you're like, should I use an M dash? Read it aloud. Read the sentence aloud. Because remember, an M dash is an immediate cut into a new thought. So if you read it aloud, you will actually be able to feel, does it feel naturally like it should be a thought? So this is how it should read as with an M dash. Once long ago, he would have accepted such a duty without question, without resentment, right? There's no pause here. But once long ago, he would, commas give us the pause. M dash, there's no pause. So that's just a cool little trick to help out anyone if they're ever unsure about M dashes. Okay, what else do we got? And protect the living. What made this go different? Yeah, and I mean, a lot of his good setup was really good. Clearly, he's going after the girl, and the girl is our main character. And we're intrigued. And the prologue was super short. I don't think it was too long, so I'm pretty happy with that. Eliana. And now, okay, so I think I only have one. Let's see. I think I have one recommendation for the start of the chapter. You start off with the energy drink and the radio droning, which is fine. And then we go to the radio, and then the do not fall asleep. The past month had been hell. I almost would rather. I think I would almost rather you start the chapter right here. Do not fall asleep at the wheel. This is just stronger. This line right here is as strong as protect the girl. I think I would rather you start the chapter off here. This is just a much stronger start. Because then there is like, oh, everyone can relate with that. If they've been driving while they've been tired, don't fall asleep at the wheel, right? That's something that's easily relatable. Not everyone can relate with drinking energy drinks. I think I would recommend that you start here. I ask myself, because a lot of this is just scene setting, which is absolutely important. The drone and the radio, if anything, the tragic news. Nearby flash floods. Yep. So, and this is world building right here. She slapped the radio off and gripped the wheel. Yeah, so I think I would start here. The past month had been hell. I would start with this. I would intersperse a little bit of this. If the flash floods bit is important, like you're like, hey, I need to do some foreshadowing, then add this after. But I would go here, paragraph one, paragraph two, and I would shorten this paragraph if you can. And then you go into the past month because what you want to get to is we want to get faster to why is she in why what has happened, right? And I need to get a sense that her parents died a month ago. Anybody who had lost two parents less than a month ago, and if they had a great relationship with their parents or anybody, would like they probably still wouldn't be functioning right after a month. And you explore all of this, which is great. You explore it all down here, which is awesome. But I need to feel that immediately. So anything that's not about that doesn't give the reader the sense of how effed up her life is immediately is doing a disservice because it is such a great character background. So I would say try to minimize any world building stuff, minimize extra description until we've gotten through some of what's happened with their parents, and then you can layer back on some of that world building and foreshadowing because all of this, the stuff with their parents, that's what will attach your reader to your character even more. And then this is great. The phone call had come earlier that month. A stranger with a disconnected, unfeeling voice. You did a really nice job of transitioning this story with the parents dying. So yeah, so I think just from this first chapter, just a little bit of just restructuring it a little bit, but everything that you have is pretty structurally sound. So that'd be my biggest thing. Let's see. But yeah, the story with the parents, that was heartbreaking, and that made me feel for her character. By the time I was finished with this excerpt, I was invested in the character personally. I was absolutely invested in the character. I was like, wow, she lost her parents. Some mysterious voice told her that her parents were going to die. Now, since you had set up the prologue with Greek mythology, it's like, okay, some type of Greek mythology thing is happening. Cool. But you've already set up intrigue. Parents died. Maybe it's natural, maybe it's unnatural. Who knows? And now her entire life is upside down. Not only is her life upside down, she's basically nearly dying. She's putting herself into so many unsafe situations. You've done so many save the cat moments for her so early on. It makes me automatically or intrinsically want to feel bad for her. So really, really great job. I think this is a really great example of how do you get a reader to care about a character through multiple uses of heart gripping, of just multiple uses. Yeah. Nearly falls asleep at the wheel and nearly dies. Lost her parents, who are best friends in the world. Her world is she's basically almost dying now with all of her actions. And you're tying it back to the parents. It's always going back to the parents, which is going to be her character journey. Her character journey in the book is why couldn't she be like her parents? Yep, the character journey is why can't I be like my parents? I lost them. I am going to continue to spiral. When really the question that she has to answer is why can't I be my own person? Which is something that many readers will relate with. So really, really great work. Yeah, awesome. I'm glad that I was able to connect that. So really, really great job there. And let's see. And then you go into her like sleeping with other people, but really never forming relationships. I think why it works is because it's always connected back to her parents, and I think that's why it's done well. Because really, she's just you could tell she's stuck in a cycle. And this is just proofreading. This is a grammar line edit thing on my end. I don't like to put so many questions together unless you're doing it to prove a point. I think that why when you ask one question of a reader, the reader now wants to know the answer. When you ask two questions for a reader, you're might lose the relevance of the first question. When you ask 3 questions of a reader, you might lose the relevance of the first 2 questions, right? Because when you ask a question, we want an answer. It should be question, answer, question, answer. But reading doesn't always work out like that. The only times that, and this is just my personal belief, I heard this in rule of threes way back when. The only time you really want to use 3 questions back to back is if the questions are building on each other to prove a point. And I think this is an example where it can do that. Because I asked myself, what are the questions? Was she foolish for attempting to chase something that didn't exist? The reader knows the answer. It's yes. But she doesn't know that. Why couldn't she just be happy with them? Why can't she just be happy with them? What's wrong with her? Her parents died. Why was she clinging to the idea that someone somewhere would be worth fighting for? Because her parents died. Who might even fight for her? This is an interesting one, right? Because this is speaking back to, oh, is there someone out here? So I think all 3 of these questions are kind of the same thing. So I think either option 1, you narrow it down, you pick 1 question, or option 2, you pick 3, and then you ask yourself, what is the answer for each of these questions? And you want the question to build on top of each other. Let's see. Yeah, and all this was great. I was so surprised when I read this, almost drowning in the bathtub, suffocating from a gas leak, and finally waking up barefoot in the middle of the street at 3 a.m. Now, the only transition with this was I had almost lost this because it preceded a nightmare. So you talk about her sleeping, you talk about her having nightmares and things like that, which that's horrible. Worse than the nightmares though was the waking terror. It took me a moment. I had to think about it for a moment. I was like almost drowning in the bath. Okay, so these are real things that had happened to her. I don't know if there's a real fix for this one because you do have to start off with the nightmares first because the waking terror is worse. But it's just something to keep in mind. I had for a moment thought that these might be nightmares, but like, no, you said waking terror. So just FYI. This is a great moment. Her standing her in the middle of the street is a really great moment. Okay. Yep. And then we're going here. So I think overall it feels good. We're doing a lot of heavy character development, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. After we get what's happening here, obviously we need sleep. So once we get to here and she's talking about the life that she wants to live, I'm asking myself how much of all this is important, but I don't know without reading more. I don't know without reading more. And my guess is maybe her wanting to go to school is probably tied into the plot of the next chapter, or the climax of this chapter, or the resolution of whatever is going to happen at the end of this chapter. So it's hard to say. Yeah, that was just something that was on my mind, and yeah, I think that's all that I got for you, my friend. Thank you, Blast Rights. Thank you so much for submitting. Definitely a really cool submission. Really great work. I was definitely so intrigued by this, and I thought that was such a great submission. And I'm so happy. Each of the submissions we've gotten today have been vastly different styles of writing. We got horror, was that horror, romance, fantasy, and then that was romantasy, but I feel like it was kind of like so far, I don't know if I gotten romantasy vibes yet. So far, I've gotten like mythological fantasy vibes. So far, it feels like fantasy. I don't know if I've gotten romantasy yet, but it's probably because the subplot, the romance subplot hasn't started. So far, I would say fantasy. You say the genre was mythic. Why choose romantasy? Which is cool. So awesome. Thank you so much for suggesting that and doing that. And then, of course, you're always welcome to resubmit for excerpts and later story and critique streams. So you're absolutely always welcome to resubmit for excerpts in later story and critique streams. Awesome. Welcome again to the community. And excellent. So with that, I feel like that was a really great one. On that note, I think my voice is giving out a little bit, so I'm probably going to wrap up the readings here for today. I can just feel it. I think I'm still getting over from a cold, so I just don't think I'm going to be able to give another reading the brilliance that I wish it could. But you guys are in luck. Our next story and critique show, we should be back on a normal cadence. So we'll be back to the next story and critique stream, episode 46, in 2 weeks. So we should be back onto a 2-month cycle. So that way you don't have to wait too long for the next episode. So, but make sure that if you want more feedback on your story, submit now. It's linked down in the YouTube description down below, because there were definitely some I couldn't get through today, but the sooner you submit, the more likely you're able to get to on an earlier stream. And then let's say you submitted and you need feedback sooner, you can always reach out to me for writing services. I offer coaching, book editing, and all these different things, and obviously audiobook narration as well, to help you with the process. My rates are about 10% below industry standard, and then I also give huge discounts. I have excellent feedback from everybody who I've worked with, and I hope that I show what I know that I'm talking about over the course of these past 500 live streams. Awesome. And then as a heads up for any of our YouTube channel members, if you want to support the community or you just want to join us, tomorrow is our next YouTube channel member only live stream. I'm going to be doing a workshop on how to write a book. I'm going to be walking you through step 1 from idea all the way to hitting that publish button. And we'll even talk a little bit about marketing, advertising, and what that looks like once we hit publish. So that's going to be tomorrow's workshop. If you are a YouTube channel member, you'll be able to come join us. Essentially, it's a live filming of, it's still a live stream, but it's basically, I do it as a live filming, and then you're getting the early access to it when the video will be uploaded eventually. But yeah, it's really cool. As part of the live stream channel member experience, you get to kind of hang out and watch it and then ask questions. So if you're not a channel member, it's only $5. Great way to support the community. You also get the icons and the emojis. All you have to do is click that join button down below the YouTube video. You click join, great way to support. It's also linked down in the description, but it's an awesome way to support the community. So hopefully I'll be able to see some of y'all tomorrow. It's been great having everyone in the stream, and it's been awesome. Thank you all for the great comments. Thank you all for everything. Blastic. Thanks so much, Kauffman in chat. Super helpful advice. Whiteseer Kauffman, how busy is the backlog of submissions looking? Backlog, I want to say right now, I think it's not too horrible. I think there were a couple of submissions that weren't quite qualified for whatever reason. But not too bad. I think submission rate, I think we have about like 4 to 8-ish range right now in the backlog, so it's not horrible. So yeah, you should be good. But here's the thing. This is what I recognize. This is what I notice. Whenever a story and critique show happens, like 1 or 2 people might turn in the submission, but writers start submitting like the days before the critique stream. And then they don't get their story read for a couple of streams, which is why I always tell everyone, submit sooner. Submit sooner. So that way you just have a better chance of getting your story read, at least within the month. So, but you guys know, right? We're going to keep doing this. 45 episodes and counting. Awesome. All right, my friends, thank you all for joining today. And most importantly, before you leave, tap that like button on your way out. Help us show the algorithm that writing streams are cool. All right, my friends, I'll be back tomorrow. But unfortunately, that brings us to the end of the stream. Don't forget, words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers. Stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow. Stay creative, writers. It's time to write
now.
Sorry.
Right now, not right now, but right now. Read now, right now. Is that right?
Words are wind, but stories are forever. I'm Kauffman, and I'll catch you on the morrow.